Welcome to the MagickHourZ podcast, the podcast where we discuss art, pop culture, and spirituality. I'm your host, Zoe Flowers, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the MagickHourZ. I am Zoe Flowers, and today I have the pleasure of talking to a long-time sibling of mine, Ron Ragin. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Ron. So Ron is a researcher, a strategist, an organizer, a coach, an interdisciplinary artist. He sustains a vibrant performance and creative writing practice rooted in music of the African diaspora. So, that's interesting, Ron, because we met at Alternate Roots, which was an artistic and activism based, organization. And I remember you singing. I don't know if you remember that when you all did that piece and you had your afro at the time and it was all dark and y'all were harmonizing.
Wow. I don't. I'm like, so many things have happened at Roots. Was that when we did this like ritual piece with all these different elements?
I think so, because there was a
Yeah.
screen, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
y'all were doing all of that. So musical healing, when I think about healing, I always think about you in that. And so
Mm.
also improvisation and cultivation of spiritual technologies. He's ever curious about the role of sound. Look at that. And the unamplified human voice in particular in transforming our environment, ourselves, and each other. Alongside his creative work, Ron partners with artists, organizations, and grant-making institutions to help them move in deeper alignment with their values, goals, and principles. For nearly a decade, he worked in the field of arts and cultural philanthropy with program officer posts at the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. He currently serves as the director of the MAP Fund's SPA program, which offers coaching and gathering opportunities to artists. Ron makes a mean red velvet cake, can throw down on some biscuits, and makes home in New Orleans. So, yes, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. So, of course, we have your bio and that gives us an overview of who you are, but I'd love to hear from you about how you feel you move through the world.
Hmm. Well, I have this mug today that a former roommate left to me. It says Dreamer.
Okay.
Mm. Cheers to that. So
I love
that
that.
feels like a big part of it. Um, I move through the world, I hope, with a lot of intention.
Mm,
And part of what I intend is to practice being as loving and compassionate to myself as possible.
mm,
That has been the work. That has been a big part of it. And I think for me, as my bio might indicate, a lot of the work that I've been doing is sort of on behalf of others through these institutional forms, these institutional bureaucracies in many
yeah.
instances. And I think that I also am really interested in holding space for other people or co-creating space for these kinds of creative explorations and for making things together. So that's been a lot of my artistic practice too. I rarely work alone. I rarely do things alone. So the self-compassion tip, it's been like, how can I extend that same sweetness and warmth that I like to share with others to myself? And that's been a big part of the journey as of late and how I'm trying to show up in the world. And I think there's something important about holding myself sacred in those ways that also create some space for imagining and dreaming other possibilities for those who witness me in that practice. which, it's very in vogue these days, but it often looks like a no, I'm not going to do that
Yeah.
practice, or like actually, here's what I'm down to do, not necessarily what you just requested. Um, and really, really seeing the power in that, of publicly advocating for oneself in these sort of like small and everyday ways. That I'm just like, the question I'm sitting with these days is, how can I invite other voices into my life? And when I'm presented with I don't know, set of decisions, a set of possibilities, one of the factors that I consider is like, which one has the most ease, which path invites the most ease. Um, so that's a big orientation right now,
Yeah.
particularly in a world that feels peculiarly harsh and trying.
Yeah, I think that's right. You
Yeah.
said that. Now, yes, absolutely. Yes. So, it's so funny you say that, looking for the things that are going to bring you the most ease, and also declining certain things and uplifting things that you really want to do. And I actually did that with a friend of mine recently. And I find myself having the confidence to do that more and more. How how did you arrive at this place of holding yourself sacred and honoring your yes, especially in a world that would have us believe that we should say yes to everything, right? Rise and grind and hustle and all of those things. There's always the pressure
Hmm.
to do that. But how did you arrive at the place of holding yourself sacred?
Well, some of this because we've known each other for such a long time. And
You
really,
gotta act like that's true. That's true. That's true.
no, 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 but it's good. It's good. It's good.
That's true. That's true.
I'm just saying, like, so please feel free to ask me for more details, because I might, be like, because you know about
I know.
X,
I
Y,
know.
Z.
I know. It's true.
Uh, but yeah, for those who don't know, Zoe's been, yeah, very much a big sibling to me, and helped me really do some of this work. And I think a big part of it is, my body was just like, no. My body said no first. Um, the physical inability to say yes is the thing that first led me
Wow.
to the path of least resistance
Mm,
as a mantra.
mm,
In many instances, it doesn't always have to be that way. There's space for force, there's space for effort, there's space for making the way. And yet, to be in that mode all the time, and I think particularly given some of the institutions that you just named, and the quality of, being this like Black person who gets,
yeah.
enough cred to step into some of these spaces of white supremacy and be in those rooms and at those tables, those mythical tables of power. That's a lot of effort every day. It's
Yeah.
a very privileged and also like very trying, energetically, spiritually, politically fraught space.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, my body was just like, nah, bruh, we're not doing that anymore. So I just
Mm,
started to get sick. Um, and those illnesses took on a lot of different, very unpredictable forms, um, to a point where I had to leave a job, and I could have stayed. I probably would have died, or
mm.
been in a position where um, my health was permanently impaired in a significant way. And so I'm grateful to the spirits, my mother, friends like you, who were just like, yeah, it's time to go. You need to come correct with yourself. You need to be in integrity with what you know you need, which is not this. And part of the call in that transformation was to shift my practice in terms of how I'm spending the majority of my working time and energy, toward creative pursuits, toward the spiritual work that I know I'm here to do, which is very much co-constituting with my creative practice. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the first thing, and it was, as I look back, really, there had always been these signs, like the body speaks gently and then speaks more loudly, as does spirit. And for me, those two things happen very much together. Spirit speaks to me through my body's physical experiences. So, if I suddenly get ringing in my ears, I'm like, oh, something I need to pay attention to. Or if I'm like walking out my house and my bag gets snagged on the doorknob, I'm like, what did I forget to do before I left the house? So little things like stubbing my toe, right? I'm just like, okay, I need to move more slowly. I'm not paying attention. So that has been, as I look back, a refrain in terms of the call toward ease, the call toward self-compassion as a first step.
Yeah. I love that. I love that intentional ease and intentional slowness again, because it is just, and hopefully we're going there. Hopefully we're going there as a society. I definitely hear more people talking about ease, obviously, since the past 2 years that we've had. What has the response from others been when you make these declarations? Because sometimes we're afraid to make declarations because we're afraid of the responses. So, moving towards ease, what has been the response that you've received, if any?
Yeah. Well, I think here is where I'm able to really see how privilege works. Like, I think there's something about, for sure, being a cis man in patriarchy, in the context that we live in, where like I get to make declarations as default, right? Like, I think that's real. I benefit
Wow.
from that, right? I think there are ways in which I don't get challenged, where
Yeah.
people of other gender presentations and identities might. I think that's very much operating in my service. Um,
Wow.
I think that I went to a fancy undergraduate program at Stanford. I've got degrees in institutional affiliations that are fairly elite,
Right.
that allow me to say this is what I want, and people will listen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I got Mercury and Leo, so I can talk.
We love
But
Mercury.
no, yeah, all those things. I think there are ways that I'm very financially stable through a lot of planning and intention over the years, and access to resources that
Yeah.
I've been afforded. And a big part of my ability to say no is rooted in the fact that I'm not struggling for basic survival purposes. You
Yeah.
know, and that's been intentional on my part. Um, I've always lived well below my means, in part because I could, and in part because I was like, I need to be able to be like, no, at whatever point I need to say no. And so now, being a self-employed person and having been so for the last almost 7 years now, um, and I get to choose what I do.
Yeah.
I get to choose what I do. I get to choose who I work with, and I get to set terms around those engagements, which are imperfect. There's negotiations as humans, being human. So there's always ebb and flow and imperfection and compromise. But I can be clear about what my non-negotiables are. I don't work before noon. I don't. I'm not going to be in a meeting. This call was at noon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, I don't do meetings on Wednesdays or Fridays. You know, I don't work at all on Fridays. Right? I try not to have more than a 20-hour work week. And I work with people I like. I love people, and some of the people I love I don't want to work with. So,
Yeah.
and I like people that I don't necessarily love in the same way that I love others. But
Yeah.
I work with people I like.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. I work with people I respect. I work with people I can have these kind of conversations with. And I work in spaces that feel nourishing. I think so much of the work of racial capitalism, as we've experienced in this U.S. context, is becoming increasingly talked about, like rooted in extraction.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
You know, a black body is merely a body to be bought, sold, and exhausted, and then you just get another one.
That's
You
right.
breed another one.
That's
Right?
right. That's right.
And so there's a resounding no in my spirit to those kinds of dynamics.
Yeah.
And you know, we talk a lot about generational healing. I've had these kinds of conflicts with my grandfather lovingly, where he's like, you know, he ain't say this, but he's basically like, you're really entitled, you know. And I'd be like, yeah, I am. I am.
And we
You're
should
right.
be.
You're right. I am. And I know that's different than what you experienced, you know, being born in the 1920s
Mm-hmm.
in Georgia, in Pierre, Georgia, where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so we inhabit those spaces differently. We inhabit our bodies differently.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, the arts
Yeah.
and the bureaucracies of philanthropy and the nonprofit sector that surrounds that form of arts and cultural production in this country are very much rooted in extraction. Like I've been a part of multiple artistic processes too, where like that was the orientation. We have to be exhausted or we're not doing the work, you know. And so I think coming out of that orientation and shifting, there have definitely been some sticky conversations, you know, inside of creative practice, which is again for me usually collective and collaborative, devised. You know, we don't know what we're doing; we're just figuring it out together. But also in my work, and so I think people find it refreshing and affirming to themselves when they see someone moving with clarity in these ways, as I try to. But there can be challenges when that means that they don't get what they want. And not to be flip about it, but I think there's something important about inhabiting myself in such a way that people know that I will leave if things are not mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
If things are not in alignment for me, I will go.
Yeah.
And I will do that in as respectful and communicative and open a way as I can, and with space for curiosity and listening. But you know, yeah. I think most people who work with me know that I always feel empowered to leave if I need to transition. And I think that's really important. Also on the converse, that like I actively choose to be there, right? There's not like a I have to do this or I feel obligated to do that or like debt or guilt orientation toward the engagement. It's like I'm here out of desire and alignment. And I want to be able to show up to all, ideally, but at least most of my relationships and like projects and engagements with that level of presence. Yeah.
And were you always, I'm curious about younger Ron.
Oh, Ron.
Did you always have a sense of groundedness or rootedness, you know, when you were a younger child? Did you want to be an artist? That's my first question.
Oh, Baby Ron was a singer for sure.
Yeah.
Loved to sing. Um, been connecting with this child a lot more recently, in part because I had really bad acid reflux last year and it damaged my vocal cords and my
Oh,
throat quite a bit. And so I'm in a long process of vocal repair right
okay.
now. So there's some work to be done with with him and his energy and spirit. But yeah, I'd say the youngest version of me that I can recall and that I've heard stories about was very much love to sing. The story that I know best is, and I do think I have some memories of this that aren't just from stories that people have told me,
Okay.
but I really loved Smooth Operator. It was my favorite song. Um, that was my first favorite song, I think, with Smooth Operator. And it was Smooth Operator at
Yes,
the
I can
time
see
for
it.
me. But yeah, I would be in my car seat, like just jamming and rocking out. Like that was the song that everybody was like, "Oh, this child loves to sing." So
Wow.
yeah, singing, sound making, being in communion in that way was a big part of Baby Ron's life. Um, and I was very, and still am, as a child, like very anti being famous. That never like resonated with me. My parents were like, I did audition for Star Search back in the
Okay.
day,
This is
and I
why I love
got
this podcast. I did not know this. I did not. I love this.
I auditioned for Star Search. I think it was seven, and I did the videotape. You know, you send in the tape, and then if they call you back in the day when people called each other. So I
Yes.
got the like call, and we were living in New Jersey at the time, and so we drove to New York City, and I had my first like ever audition for anything. But I was so nervous. I had never performed for anyone but my family. That was before we had started going to church. So I'd really
Okay.
never done anything for a stranger. I'd never
Okay.
sung in front of a stranger. So
Okay.
I didn't do particularly well at my audition. But so that I wouldn't actually take that as an like the necessary precondition for what I'm about to say, but
Okay.
I was never like necessarily doing it for fame or like as a desire to make it a job. It was something that just innately animated my life. And so that being said, I did have this strong sense when I was a kid that I didn't want to be famous. And so my parents, I think, like just didn't push me in any way to audition or like be out. And I just like to sing at home. I would perform for my family. That was fun. I love Bobby Brown. Don't Be Cruel, that album. So
That-
Little
yeah.
Ron had no rhythm. I don't know where it came from, but he finally found it. But like Little Ron was like spinning like very in circles in front of the fireplace, not on the beat or on his own beat. It was not in relationship at all to what was happening on the speakers. Oh mercy! There are videos. My
Oh
aunt and uncle have this,
shoot.
and it's really interesting. But yeah, so I think I think I'd always thought about art in a community context, right? Like I really early on for like out of desire or fear, I'm not sure, both a little bit, to just be in circle with people.
Yeah.
That's where I loved it. And once we did start going to church, once we moved to Georgia when I was 9, that was like, oh, okay, this congregational singing is where I really
Yeah.
get my sense of communion.
Yeah.
And I think it was in the pews that things started to make sense in terms of how I wanted to be in vocal community.
Mm.
I was never like, oh, I need a solo. I was
Mm.
often given solos because people
Mhm.
like this little one can sing, but that was never what I loved most. I just love being in the choir. I love being in the tenor section or what have you,
Yeah.
and harmonizing with people. So that's the those are the artistic roots, and I think that's been the through line really for all of my creative work, vocally centered or otherwise, has been, oh, what can we make together?
Yeah.
What can we make together? And how can
Yeah.
that feel really nourishing? what we're making. Um, so yeah, should I answer did you want to follow up on anything, or should I talk about the groundedness?
Talk about the groundedness, and then we're going to talk about spirituality since we've gone down this
All right.
conversation about the pews, and then we'll delve into spirituality.
Yeah, I think the youngest version of me was very grounded in relationships. I try to ask people for stories. Like in the last 5 years or so, I've just been like, can you tell, like, what do you remember about me as a kid?
Yeah.
Like, at the youngest possible, like, what do you feel like was the core of what I was bringing energetically? Like,
Yeah.
who was I? What was this little person offering? And so what I've learned is that I was very excitable. Like I was very like calm, but then I get like very excited about things that I was very excited about.
Okay.
Apparently, I really loved Fraggle Rock, which was this like the show. Yes,
Yes.
on the whatever the public station was at the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
And if the song from Fraggle Rock came on and I was anywhere, like I could hear it in the house, I'd like run toward the TV and then like get so excited, just like run around the coffee table because Fraggle Rock was on. I would like sing and I would get so excited sometimes I would pee in my pants.
Oh my god.
So,
Oh my god.
so I very excitable, but
Oh,
also
shit.
like very calm.
Yeah.
As a default, like very very down to be alone. Like I could like entertain myself,
Yeah.
but also very interested in sharing everything I had with people. So like if like people would come to the house, I'd like take them to my room and I would want to show them my toys and I would want them to like play with me and like I don't know whatever games I was making up at the time. So I think that I had like some like balanced polarities that I was working along
Yeah.
those spectrums.
Yeah.
So like generosity, welcoming, wanting to be with people, also wanting to be alone,
Yeah.
very calm, but also very excitable. Like, and yeah, that all feels right. Like, could perform, but also just happy not being in front of everybody all the time, you know? So I think
Yeah.
there's like a
Yeah.
balancedness that
Yeah.
I also feel resonates with my current understanding of what I need. That I have to like find the equilibrium always. Sort
Yeah.
of one of the spiritual calls, which is
I
like
love
very
that.
much in my chart. My chart is like everything is aspected. Everything is
Yeah.
like, damn.
Well, that's what I
So,
was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about your Libra placements and your seventh house placement.
oh, uh, Saturn and Pluto conjunct in my second house in Libra. It's a lot.
Really?
Still understanding what that means, but yeah,
Oh, Saturn
it's a
and
lot.
Pluto conjunct in Libra. Well, no, that makes so much sense with the balance piece. And it's so interesting that you brought up my favorite planet, Saturn, because you know that he went retrograde yesterday and will
Hmm.
be retrograde until October 22nd.
Hmm.
And so, but that makes sense. That limitation on now I'm with you, now I'm with myself. I'm going internal. I'm being very Pluto, like being okay with the mysteries and things like that and the depths of things on your own. And then
Yeah,
sharing when it makes sense. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, yeah. I fuck with Saturn
Huh?
and Pluto conjunction. It feels it feels feels right. It feels weighty,
Yeah.
but good.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
seventh house is Pisces,
Pisces in the seventh.
and my moon is there. So
Yeah. I love it.
yeah, Tinder,
Yeah.
Tinder, Tinder
Yes.
dreamer.
Yes, right? And visionary and psychic,
Hmm. Oh
all
yeah,
those things, all those
all
things.
the feels, the
Yeah,
collective shows up somatically for me very intensely too. Right.
that all makes
Going
sense.
back to
Yeah.
the earlier comment about illness and whatnot. So yeah, the pandemic, needless to say, has been a very interesting time for me. unprecedented in my body knowledge.
Mm.
So, but
Because
I'd say the groundedness shifted like with puberty and queerness and being in the rural South, and then it became like a whole other thing where I was very not grounded, um, and felt very unmoored, um, in a lot of ways, from any sort of sensibility, particularly with my body, like very alienated from it.
yeah.
And so that's been a long process of coming back to myself after, a really challenging, like, second half of childhood, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, Bible Belt, very conservative, um, community, and yeah, just went into hiding was basically my experience during that time, from others and from myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say what has been consistent and what held me down was trees. I grew up in a forest and on a non-working farm that last 9 years of my life, and so I would literally just go walk around in the forest and like, sing to the trees, to the loblolly pine trees,
Mm.
and I had to cut the grass in the summers almost every weekend. So I'd just be on my lawnmower with my Discman, which is a terrible combination of things. It's like, how do I be on the riding lawnmower with this thing that can skip all the time? I developed some sort of system. I don't know.
Oh, right. Yeah. How
Um,
would you keep that skill?
it was terrible. It was terrible. But I somehow made it work. And yeah,
Shout out to the
just
man.
sing loudly to the trees. That was the grounding that I had as second half of my childhood.
Do you feel like that singing to the trees was the emergence of your now spiritual? I don't even want to call it a practice because it's the way we embody life. So, do you feel like it was the beginning of your embodiment as a spiritual being?
I don't think it was the beginning of my embodiment, but I do think that it was a important paradigm shift. I
Hmm.
think that I've joked sometimes that like trees were my only friends for a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true. It was a joke that had a core of truth, as many
Mm-hmm.
jokes do.
As most do, yeah.
I what I think shifted there was understanding the non-human world as um, alive and dynamic, and the academic term that's coming to me is agential,
Wh-
right?
What? Say it
Having
again. Say it.
personality, having will, having power, having an ability to interact with me.
Agential.
And that was mhm,
Agential.
agential, agency. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I think what I was like, these are entities. I can be in communication with this environment and the individual entities that I can recognize inside of it. I had this very
Yeah.
clear sense that I was in communion, like in church, but in this case with the trees
Mm-hmm.
and whatever else could hear the sound of my voice that I was vibrating with. So it was very like that was the change. That was like, oh, I'm in a relationship with these other beings.
Mm.
And I don't think I think it's noteworthy that I like not beyond getting mosquito bites, which like you're going to get them. I mean, I'm
Right.
sure there are people who don't get mosquito bites because they're in such communion with the mosquitoes
Mm-hmm.
that they can just be like, "Do not bite me,
Mm-hmm.
thank you." I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there yet, but whatever I was giving, I never got hurt. like in Georgia, everything is poisonous. Like
Yeah.
maybe not
Yeah.
everything. There are so many things that can cause you harm. Biting
Yeah.
flies and mosquitoes are the only things that I think ever caused me any level of harm, and that was fairly mild. I never
Mhm.
got poison ivy or poison oak. Never encountered a snake that I didn't see first, and we like respectfully like went other ways. Like wild boars, bears. We got all kinds of shit that can cause you harm. Alligators, water moccasins, like just like there's poison, death,
Everywhere.
maiming.
Everywhere.
It's possible every day I walk around those woods. But my sisters and I have two younger sisters. Like we never got hurt, never got a tick, like nothing.
I know.
So there was something about being in communion and conversation with the land, with the
Yeah.
water, the air, in this place where my family had been stewarding land for all these generations that felt like very much uh, sustaining
Yeah.
and also transformed my relationship to life
Yeah.
beyond my own self, beyond humans. So that feels like the important thing.
I love that.
That
I
feels
love
like the
that.
important thing.
Yeah, I love that. And when you think about your spiritual walk now, what are some of the things that you want to share about that?
I think a deep reverence for this planet
Mm,
and the cosmos and all beings feels like the core of my spiritual practice and belief system. If I treat everything like it's divine, how does that shift the way that I move in the world?
mhm.
Um, a big part of my spiritual practice now is silence, which I've gotten a lot of experience of living alone
Yeah.
for most of this pandemic now too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's something about a call toward stillness that feels really important. I'm a very kinetic person. I want to be in motion most of the time. Um, Singing, dancing, moving, running around, twirling, like I just a dervish,
Mhm.
simply. Um, but increasingly, really embracing the the practice of stillness, not just in meditation per se, all the variations of finding moments of stillness.
Yeah.
And for me, what that's about is then affording the ability to listen. So I think listening is a big part of my spiritual practice as well, which connects a lot to the creative work that I do
Mhm.
and have done. And honestly, I miss singing with people. That is one of the most challenging aspects of the pandemic for me. Is that I feel the core of my creative practice is very inaccessible to me.
Yeah.
Um, I've started to sing more with people outdoors, which is lovely and great.
Okay.
I was just
Okay.
sitting around a fire pit yesterday with a guitar and singing with people. So it's nice to find some more pathways. But listening is such a big part of singing, and singing with others in particular. So that feels like an essential connecting practice that links the spiritual and creative for me in a very fundamental way. It's also a big part of poetry writing, which I've reconnected with in part because it's something I can do
Wow.
well without other people during isolation.
Yeah.
I really hate writing, in part because it requires me to sit still. I just dislike the practice, and no
Yeah.
matter like how much dictation or other ways I can
Yeah.
try to like
Me too.
document text, at some point you like gotta, or at least I feel I need to put it down on virtual or physical paper,
Yes.
and I just really dislike sitting still. So a big part of the stillness is also like making space for writing. But yeah, um, those things. Um, and I think my spiritual practice is also very much about being with people, like
Mm.
honoring all the different kinds of entities and um, beings. Like human beings, there's something in particular that's important to me about finding ways forward together, like supporting and sustaining, being in collective liberatory practice together that feels essential to what I deem spiritual manifesting. Um, I think it's really important to, yeah, find ways forward together and to dream with people. It's a part of my
Mm.
spiritual practice too. And I've got my tools. I'm part of a Lukumi spiritual house, so there are those frameworks around things. Oh, we haven't had that conversation. Well, that
We
happened
sure
when I was,
haven't.
yeah. Um,
Wow.
I, I have my decks, and I have my prayers that I've cultivated over all of these years. I've got my altars in my house, one of which is here behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I have sort of frameworks and technologies and legacies of practices that I am stewarding. And I don't know, something when you asked me the question, it felt important to sort of think about what holds all of those pieces together, what undergirds them,
Yeah.
before I jump into the specifics.
No, I love this. What decks are you using right now?
I have the I Ching Oracle deck that
Okay.
I first encountered with you,
Yes.
which is just wonderful.
Okay.
When I need a certain kind of clear poetic word, that's where I go.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I go. So I've been really loving that. I don't know, when was like 3 or 4 years ago?
You and I?
Probably like,
It
yeah.
had to.
Well, that you told me. I think you read that deck with me. We've pulled from it multiple times, but it's probably like 2019 that I
I
got
think
my own.
so. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I have the Dust to Onyx deck
Yes. That you
for
gifted
Tarot.
me. Yes.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
using
So
it now? Are you
yeah, I'm using
using
it.
it
So
now?
yeah, oh yeah. Because I think when I first told you about it, because I got that deck and the I Ching deck, I think the same year. I think it was
Yeah.
2019. But the Dust to Onyx deck, I really just sat with it for 6 months
Right.
and just studied each of the cards. I just looked at it. But I started using it like
Wow.
actively. Actually, it was 2020. It was
Ah.
actually on the cusp of the 2019-2020 new year that I pulled from it for the first time. What an auspicious moment. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm actively using it.
Wow. It's, I do find that I need at least a year sitting with it. When you gifted it to me, I started using it right away and very quickly realized that this was not a deck that I should use with other people.
Yeah.
Like this is my deck. It's right over there. It's on my altar over there. And there's so much to that deck.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's an entity. Talk about entities. Yeah, that is a. It's powerful. That's why when I got it, because it was also the first deck that I've ever used, I
Oh,
was like, oh, I just need to sit with this thing. And I think the guidebook. I'm trying to
mm-hmm.
remember the sister's name who made it. What's her name? Oh,
Mm.
it's escaping me right now. Forgive me, beautiful being who made this deck.
So,
Um, but the guidebook really suggested like sitting with the deck first. It didn't say for how long, but it said, just sit with the card, like you might with any other deck. But this, I felt like a room of requirement.
yeah,
And so I took my time, and
yeah,
that felt really good to do.
yeah. I started following her on YouTube. So her name, I just looked it up real quick, is Courtney Alexander. So for folks
Yes,
who are
Courtney
looking
Alexander. Thank you.
for a deck, or for want to support, a melanated tarot reader and creator. Again, and if you want to learn history, I mean, it's all in
Hmm.
that deck, and it's stunning.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's gorgeous. It's art. Each
yeah.
card
It is
is
art.
just
It's yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I've been using those to check in.
Mhm.
Their way of checking in. I
Mhm.
don't pull all the time.
Mhm.
I'm not like every week or you know. They have their positions in my spiritual space, and today, today's the day I need to pull a card. That just came through last
Yeah.
night actually. That today I'm gonna need to, or tomorrow at that time. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's really good. It's been really powerful to have these other access points
Right.
to be again in communion. Um, in this instance, with the etheric,
Yeah. Yeah.
very important.
And do you have any artistic projects or engagements that you want to talk about at this time that you're creating?
Yeah, I am working on a few things. I don't yet know how they're going to show up in the world,
Okay.
but some things that come to mind. I'm planning on having a book-length poetry manuscript by the end of this year, which I'm really excited about.
Nice.
I don't know what I'm gonna do with it,
Uh
but there
huh.
will be enough poems to fill a book.
Uh
So
huh.
that is a goal. So I don't know. Stay on the lookout for that.
Yes.
Um, I am excited about a project that I've been doing now for the last, this will be the third year, called Black August in Motion.
Mm.
And it's inspired by general Black August celebrations. If you don't know about Black August and honoring Black political prisoners and freedom movements, for those who are watching this, please do look it up and learn. Um, but really inspired by Mama Nia and Spirit House's work with the Black August 575 haiku writing practice. In 2020, I was pursuing that practice for the first time with a group of black folks who are affiliated with SONG, Southerners on New Ground, queer
Oh yeah.
organization in the South.
Yeah.
And so we were in that, preparing for that, and I was like, I want to write, but you know how I feel about writing. So it's like, I also want to, I want to write these haiku because that's beautiful and short. I can do that. And I also want to, but I want to make little dances too. I was like, I want to make little freedom dances. So I reached out to a bunch of friends who are performing artists, movers, black folks, particularly, and asked for prompts. And I created a collective list of prompts or a score um, with like these like really dope people. I was really grateful. So it's I think 22 people, 40 prompts. It's a living document that's still available on the internet and linked in my Instagram um, bio. And yeah, I made a small dance every day and recorded it and posted it on Instagram. Um,
Wow.
and invited others into parallel practice with me. That first year, it was much more a solo thing with a few people coming in here and there. And then in 2021, there was a small group of people comprised of folks who had contributed prompts to that initial document. And we went through the month together with these weekly check ins. And so from that, I'm really excited. A vision came for a piece that I'm excited to make. I'm collaborating with Kara Lynch, who's one of my friends and collaborators in making that initial document in 2020. And we're calling it Black Flight Experiments. But Kara offered me this beautiful prompt inspired by a book called The Sovereignty of Quiet, which is written by a scholar named Kevin Kwashi. And in The Sovereignty of Quiet, Kevin Kwashi is asking, like, what is blackness outside of its, like, public performativity, right? Like, what is black interiority? What is blackness that isn't about protest or isn't about these public displays? What is blackness as we inhabit it in ways that may well be invisible to others? And so it's a really provocative question. And in reflecting on that, Kara asked me to, in the prompt, 3 times during that first go in 2020 in the month of August, to yield to the earth, lying on the ground, and then yield to the air until I was like floating with my hands above my head, as extended as I could get. And it was a beautiful practice. I loved it. I loved the question of how to yield to air as a being with weight. And I found it creatively very stimulating, and also like theoretically and conceptually really interesting. And so we're taking those prompts and crafting a series of public performance pieces of Black interiority, which are not quite performances, that I'm really excited about. Imagine Black people in a field on these beautiful quilts, just rising and falling with a harpist in the middle of the field who's like swaddled in a giant, some sort of gorgeous flowing cape or skirt of fabric. That's basically like the seed of the vision that I have for this piece, and that Kara has been so generous to collaborate with me in thinking about and dreaming about. So those are some of the things. I've got a series of pieces about tenderness and Black masculinities that I started to perform, one as a solo, one as a duet, and one as a trio, that are always on my mind. I'm just not sure how I'm going to do that in COVID times yet. And yeah, other things. I made a talk show in 2020 because I didn't know what to do with myself, and I want to create a zine based on all the learning and the generous offerings people shared about their approaches to dreaming in times of collapse. Yeah, so there's a lot percolating. And I think the most important thing for me as I say all of that to you now is that I make space.
Yeah.
Because it feels important to share these things, again, even as the world falls down.
Yes.
Maybe because the world is falling down.
Yes. Great. Do you want to get into the reading?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into it. Now, do you want to do that collective, or do we want to just do an overall theme, overall message? We have lots of cards. We can go in many different directions.
My question is, I would love to know what we collectively need to be paying attention to in the week ahead.
Oh, okay. In the week ahead. All right. So let's take a deep breath in. Exhaling out. Understanding that this is really good. That's a good question, Ron, because this is going to be a timeless reading so that whenever people find it, it will make sense for them.
Okay.
Because because we never know when. But I like this. I like this. Okay. First, we go to the African rising goddesses. What do we collectively need to be paying attention to for the week ahead? For the week ahead. Wow, that's really interesting because this is a word that I don't. Wow, I'm also looking for the book as I'm saying this. Okay, we have resistance, and it is card number 22. It is Gang Gang Sarah, or Gang Gang Sarah, but I'm saying Gang Gang because it's African rising. So I love that it is master number 22. Right off of the bat, I'm feeling like, and for me, the reason why I don't resonate with the resistance and the whole idea of that is because I do believe what you resist persists. So, and also, it came out. So clearly, this makes me think about Saturn, actually, and the way Saturn refines us and shapes us and molds us is because of the limitation that is put on us. And it is because of the push and pull and the resistance. So, okay, Spirit, I see you. Resistance has its place. I see you. Okay. So, the way that this deck is set up is that each one of these goddesses has a temple and an element that it correlates to. So Gang Gang Sarah is from Tobago, and she is one of the shadow goddesses. And so they have all of the other temples, and then they have the illumination cards. So it's almost like this is like a major arcana, even though this is an oracle deck. This would be thought of because it's an illumination. And so it says the shadows. The shadows represent your greatest fears. Oh, I get it. I get it. Your greatest fears and the dark feminine with ominous creatures and monster goddesses of the African diaspora. The secret of the shadow self is that so-called monsters often have our greatest gifts. Their energy vibrates to iridescent white. So these goddesses also resonate to the chakras. So for me, this is resisting. If we're going to resist anything, it is, she's got many different hands here. She's got cotton in one hand. She is growing from a tree. She has coconuts at her feet. So there is abundance here. And so for me, it's almost like turning away from your fears, not letting your fears become other things. There's sunlight here. There's moon here. There's peaches here. There's all types of fruits and beautiful flowers, and also planets at the top. One, I think, is Uranus. And the other one, is that Jupiter? But let me see what this says. Shadow goddess Gangang Sarah, the witch of the Golden Lane, blew into Tobago on a determined breeze from West Africa to emancipate her family. Her shadow guidance. You are scared that you are going to mess it all up. You may have stumbled, but this is a new day. Learn to show up for yourself. I love this as guidance for the week. What a great question. What a great question. We have not messed it all up. We may be stumbling as a collective, but this is a new day. Learn to show up for yourself. Embodiment. You ghost your own dreams and resist your own magic. Stop holding back, worrying and pretending to seek perfection that will never come. When it comes to you stepping into your greatness, resistance keeps you stuck. Resistance blocks growth, creativity, and evolution. Resistance may look like procrastination, laziness, disorganization, excuses, or a lack of motivation. But there are deeper forces at play. You are resisting the force you really are. Goddess declaration. This is me. I show up. I love this. I love this for the week. This is a new deck for me, so some of them I don't know. So I love when I'm like surprised. Resisting our own selves. In what ways are we resisting our own selves, our own dreams, when there's so much here?
That takes me back to the beginning of our conversation where I was talking about ease and flow.
Yeah, yeah. And you
Yeah.
can't really see all of the things here because the green gets messed up with the camera. It blurs everything, but she is in a tree. These are roots around her. So it's interesting that we also talked about you and the trees, and here the
Aha.
trees are showing up.
Lots of shadow work going on my end. So,
Yeah, so I love
yes,
that. So
indeed.
we have three cards though. So we have the goddesses, and then we're just going to the tarot for the week. What a great question. Oh my gosh. Oh, what a great answer. Ah, yes. Yes. Yep. So resisting and this showing up for people as constantly trying to battle. We have the Two of Pentacles here. So constantly weighing things, constantly what feels like this to me is micromanaging the universe and not trusting. So we also have that Two of Pentacles, no, and then the ancestors. Okay, we're going to the ancestors. Ah, and we have the earth again. More trees, of course. Earth magic, nature, rituals, and charms. Again, lots of green. Um, so this would be a good week to go out in nature to do some earthbound magic. Maybe some water rituals would be in order this week, even though we are in Gemini, which is technically we would do air rituals, but that's fine because Earth is showing up and Saturn rules Capricorn, which is Earth. So again, if we need to be more grounded this week, going out in nature, laying on the dirt, as you were saying before, but also engaging in some type of water ritual or making some kind of charm, because it also says charms here. What I love about this particular deck, it is an ancestor deck, so it gives the region that this knowledge is actually coming from. And so, but I don't think I have, yeah, I'm not going to be able to, but I've pulled this before. Oh, I know this. I know this. This is the Druids. That's right, because I pulled this with Catherine. And so this is the Druids. So this is the, wow, it's so interesting how similar these are. We have the knowledge from the Druids and the knowledge from Africa here. And so there is definitely, again, something about earth, nature, trees this week. And so that is the guidance. That is the guidance. Come out of this Two of Pentacles, this weighing things back and forth, this worrying about, again, earthly things, because Pentacles is about material things, and go out and do some ritual. And that is what I have. So
Thank you.
good. Yes. So, Ron, before we go, one last question. What would you like your legacy to be?
Oh my God. What a powerful question. I would like my legacy to be that I built structures of care that live on in the physical, emotional, and spiritual lives of those I leave behind.
A shade of
And may
that.
those be stewarded in the same way that they were created, which is collectively.
A shade of that. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Love that. And how can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at vox_citas, VOX_SIT as in Tom AS. And you can check out my website, which needs to be updated. Who doesn't need to update the website? At ronragin.com for a little bit more information about some of my ongoing projects.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being on the show. This was very illuminating.
Thank you for having me. Such a treat.
Yes, very much a treat. So, folks, I know that you enjoyed this. Please follow Ron's work, support the work, spread the word, do all the things. I'm Zoe Flowers, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.